I'm going to react to this video, 10 Habits of People with Extremely High IQ, which already has over 2.7 million views on YouTube. But the big question is, are these so-called habits actually backed by science? Or is this just another viral psychology video stretching the truth? I'm going to break down all 10 habits and see what the research actually says. So let's get into it.
You know what's interesting about highly intelligent people? They rarely look the way we expect them to. We often imagine someone with a very high IQ as obviously brilliant, constantly speaking, solving complex problems out loud, or showing off knowledge.
Okay, let's pause there for a moment. There's actually a massive body of research showing that gifted children are often perceived differently, stereotyped, and sometimes even socially stigmatized by others. So when this video starts talking about how people often expect high IQ individuals to behave a certain way, there is a lot of truth to that. With that in mind, let's jump back into this video.
But psychology research suggests something different. Many people with extremely high intelligence actually display subtle behavioral patterns that don't always look like intelligence at first glance. In fact, cognitive psychologists often say that intelligence is less about what you know and more about how your brain processes the world. And that processing tends to show up through certain everyday habits. Here are 10 surprisingly common habits often found in people with very high IQ. The first is spending a lot of time alone. Highly intelligent people are often comfortable with solitude, not because they dislike others, but because their brains are constantly processing ideas. Solitude gives the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for planning, reflection, and complex thinking, space to work. Research from the London School of Economics even found that highly intelligent individuals tend to feel less satisfied with frequent social interaction compared to others. Their brains simply crave quiet thinking time.
First off, I couldn't find any definitive research showing that highly intelligent people are naturally more comfortable with solitude. And there's definitely no evidence supporting the claim that their brains crave quiet thinking time the way this video suggests. Now, the video does reference a real study from the London School of Economics. That study was published in 2016 in the British Journal of Psychology. And it did find that more intelligent participants in their dataset reported slightly lower life satisfaction from more frequent socializing with friends. Now, I will say I did track that study down and I did skim through parts of it, and I found some major issues with using this paper as proof that highly intelligent people are naturally more comfortable being alone. For starters, the more intelligent group in the study had an average IQ of around 115.57. That's above average, but it's nowhere near the same as studying people with extremely high IQs. The researchers also reported that the effects were small, so this wasn't some huge or dramatic behavioral difference. It was a relatively weak statistical pattern. But wait, this is where things get really interesting. That same study found that intelligence was positively correlated with frequency of socialization with friends. In other words, the more intelligent participants in the data set actually reported socializing with friends more often, not less. If highly intelligent people are more comfortable with solitude like this video suggests, then why did the more intelligent group in this study actually socialize with friends more often? Something really doesn't add up here. Based on these findings, I don't think this study provides strong evidence, or really any clear evidence at all, that high IQ people are more comfortable being alone. Now, to be fair here, this 2016 paper didn't argue that highly intelligent people are often more comfortable with solitude, nor did it suggest that spending large amounts of time alone is some defining habit of people with high IQs. That's the interpretation this video is making, not the study itself. And if you want to read the 2016 research paper for yourself, I did put a link to it in the description of this video. But for now, let's get back to reacting to this video.
The second habit is constant curiosity. People with high IQs tend to ask questions about almost everything. Not just big philosophical questions, but small everyday ones. Why do people behave this way? Why does this system work like that? Their brain naturally searches for patterns. Curiosity becomes a kind of mental engine.
Some research does suggest that people with higher IQs tend to score slightly higher on traits related to curiosity, especially intellectual curiosity, openness to ideas, and need for cognition. But the connection is usually moderate, not dramatic. One of the biggest problems here is the phrase constant curiosity. This video makes it sound like every highly intelligent person is permanently questioning everything around them 24/7. And honestly, that sounds more like a stereotype versus something that's strongly supported by science. But let's get back to reacting to this video.
The third habit is talking to themselves. This might sound strange, but psychologists call it self-directed speech. Studies show that talking to yourself can improve focus and cognitive control. It helps the brain organize thoughts and strengthen working memory. So when you see someone quietly narrating their own thinking, it may actually be a sign of an active cognitive system at work.
Self-talk can help cognition. There is research to support that. Private speech can improve performance, help with self-regulation, and support working memory on certain tasks. But what the research doesn't show is that people with extremely high IQs are especially likely to talk to themselves more than anyone else. That's where this video starts to overreach. There's no strong evidence that talking to yourself is a defining habit of highly intelligent people, specifically. Once again, this feels more like a cultural stereotype versus a scientific conclusion. The classic image of the mad scientist pacing around a lab, muttering ideas out loud to himself. Self-talk can be a normal cognitive strategy used by many different kinds of people, but by itself, it's not a sign of extreme intelligence. But let's get back to the video.
The fourth habit is being comfortable saying, "I don't know." People with very high intelligence often understand the limits of their knowledge. In psychology, this relates to something called the Dunning-Kruger effect, the tendency for less knowledgeable people to overestimate what they know. Highly intelligent individuals often do the opposite. They are aware of how much complexity exists in the world.
Some studies do suggest that higher intelligence can be associated with better recognition of one's fallibility or somewhat better calibration. But the association here is not strong enough, consistent enough, or specific enough to justify a blanket claim that people with extremely high IQ are characteristically more comfortable saying "I don't know" than the average person. So let's get back to the video.
The fifth habit is overthinking small things. An analytical brain rarely turns off. The same cognitive processes that help solve complex problems can also lead to analyzing conversations, decisions, or possibilities in great detail. Sometimes this looks like indecision, but internally, it's a brain exploring multiple mental models at once.
Now, there is some literature connecting certain kinds of rumination or worry with aspects of verbal intelligence. But the research here is mixed, and it's nowhere near strong enough to claim that overthinking small things is some standard habit of highly intelligent people. So let's move on to the next habit.
The sixth habit is a strong sense of humor. Interestingly, humor requires complex cognitive processing. To understand or create humor, the brain must recognize patterns, break expectations, and connect unrelated ideas. Studies published in intelligence research journals have shown a measurable correlation between higher IQ and advanced humor processing.
Now, this part of the video does get some things right. Humor comprehension and humor production do require more complex processing, and several studies have reported positive links between intelligence and some forms of humor ability. Now, where the video starts to overreach here is in turning that research into the broad claim that having a strong sense of humor is a reliable habit or marker of high intelligence. The best studies out there do not validate that everyday language claim. Also, not every funny person has a high IQ, and not every high IQ person has a strong sense of humor. So let's move on and keep reacting to this video.
The seventh habit is changing their minds when presented with new evidence. Highly intelligent people tend to treat beliefs as flexible mental models rather than fixed identities. When new information appears, their brain updates the model. In psychology, this ability is linked to cognitive flexibility, a key marker of advanced problem solving.
The video is partly correct here. It accurately points out that cognitive flexibility and the ability to update beliefs are associated with higher intelligence. In controlled experimental settings, people with higher cognitive ability are often more willing to revise their views when presented with new evidence. But the video smooths over some important nuance. Intelligence does not magically make someone immune to bias, emotional attachment, or identity-driven thinking. Research on motivated reasoning shows that people across the board, including those who score higher on cognitive reflection tests, which research has found to be moderately correlated with higher intelligence, can become extremely rigid when beliefs are identity-based. This includes beliefs tied to politics. In summary, smart people can update beliefs more effectively in theory, but in practice, many of them are still susceptible to the same biases and identity protective motives as anyone else. And once strong emotions get involved, even some people with very high IQs can become deeply resistant to changing their stance on an issue. So with that in mind, let's get back to the video.
Now, consider this for a moment. How often do we interpret these behaviors incorrectly? Someone who spends time alone may seem antisocial. Someone who asks many questions may seem skeptical. Someone who changes their mind may seem uncertain. But sometimes these are actually signs of deeper thinking patterns. The 8th habit is late-night thinking. Many high IQ individuals report being more mentally active at night. Some researchers connect this with evolutionary psychology, suggesting that individuals with higher cognitive flexibility adapt more easily to non-traditional patterns like staying awake later.
Let's pause there. Some older studies have reported a small association between eveningness and higher intelligence, but the differences are modest and easily confounded by lifestyle factors. In fact, a 2020 study involving Mensa members, people who score in roughly the top 2% on standardized IQ tests, found no evidence of an innate chronotype difference. Mensa members only appeared to stay up later on work days because they tended to have later work start times. So while many high IQ people may report working better late at night, the research shows only a negligible average shift and suggests it likely reflects flexible schedules rather than a unique late-night genius biology. So let's continue on with this video.
The 9th habit is observing more than speaking. Instead of immediately responding in conversations, highly intelligent people often watch social dynamics first. They gather information, analyze emotional cues, and then respond thoughtfully. This reflects strong pattern recognition in social behavior.
Despite popular belief, there is no strong evidence that extremely intelligent people inherently speak less, or spend most conversations silently observing others. Large-scale research has found little to no meaningful correlation between IQ and traits like extroversion or talkativeness. In other words, highly intelligent people aren't automatically quieter, more reserved, or more observant than everyone else. There is some research that indicates higher IQ individuals may think more before speaking. Research on cognitive reflection and analytic reasoning suggests that more intelligent people are often better at pausing, overriding impulsive answers, and deliberating before speaking. Correlations in these studies were generally small to moderate, not large nor definitive. So jumping from the research to the broad claim that people with extremely high IQs observe more than they speak is definitely an exaggeration. All right, let's move on to the next part of this video.
And finally, the 10th habit is a constant search for meaning. High intelligence often comes with an increased awareness of complexity in society, relationships, and human behavior. This can lead to deeper reflection about purpose, identity, and how people make sense of their lives.
Now, the search for meaning, this is an interesting one because it does touch on a real psychological area of research. There are studies on intellectually gifted adults suggesting more crisis of meaning than some comparison groups. But the way this video frames it, it makes it sound like highly intelligent people are all wandering around in this constant philosophical fog. And that's far more dramatic than what the data actually shows. What the video also leaves out is that these feelings are not necessarily caused by intelligence itself, or because smart people think too deeply and conclude life is meaningless. Studies suggest the real issue is under-challenged or unfulfilled potential. Gifted individuals who are not meaningfully challenging themselves may be more likely to report lower levels of meaning in life. In contrast, high achievers, a group that likely includes many highly intelligent individuals who actively pursue challenging goals, tended to report a stronger sense of meaning in life. So it's not intelligence per se, but it's how one applies it. With that said, let's move on.
It's not always dramatic or philosophical. Sometimes it's just a quiet question in the back of the mind. Why do we think the way we do? And perhaps that's the most interesting part of intelligence. It's not just about solving equations or remembering facts. At its core, intelligence is really about curiosity.
Why did the voice just change? That was really weird.
A brain that keeps exploring patterns, questioning assumptions, and trying to understand the strange, fascinating puzzle of human nature.
So I want to go back to the very beginning of this video. I feel like this is really important. It opens with this line here.
You know what's interesting about highly intelligent people? They rarely look the way we expect them to.
That opening right there almost gives off the impression that this video is going to challenge stereotypes about intelligence and highlight genuinely unexpected traits or behaviors. But ironically, it felt like this video did the exact opposite. Many of the habits it listed sounded less like research-backed patterns and more like familiar pop culture stereotypes about high IQ people. Staying up late, being alone, constantly overthinking, talking to themselves. These are all traits that we've seen over and over in fictional portrayals of genius characters. At times, it almost felt less like a psychology video and more the blueprint to a villain archetyped in a superhero movie. The isolated mad scientist, alone in a laboratory at 2 a.m., overanalyzing everything while secretly building some revolutionary invention. That doesn't mean that these behaviors can't show up in people with high intelligence, but the video often presented them as if they were defining habits of highly intelligent individuals, when in reality, many of them are broad stereotypes that can apply to countless different personality types. Now, to be fair, there were some things in this video that it did get right. Research does suggest that people with higher intelligence tend to score somewhat higher on certain forms of curiosity. Humor comprehension and humor production also do involve more complex cognitive processing. And productive self-talk can help with cognition, focus, and self-regulation, although it's not something exclusive to highly intelligent people. So the issue with this video is not that every claim in this video was entirely false. The bigger problem here is that this video takes kernels of truth and then stretches them into these definitive habits of highly intelligent people. In reality, there is no universally accepted top 10 list of behaviors that all highly intelligent people share. A lot of the evidence presented in this video also seems selectively chosen to support the narrative, while downplaying or ignoring studies that were weak, mixed, or even opposite results. Right now, the internet is flooded with AI-generated videos on psychology topics like this, and many of them contain misleading or outright false information. Lately, I've been on a mission to dig into the actual research behind some of these videos and compare the claims to what the research actually says. So if that's something you're interested in and you got value out of this video, the best way you can support this channel is by subscribing, liking this video, and sharing it with others. It helps spread awareness that not every AI-generated psychology video online is accurate. Also, I am a real human being. My name is Johnny Coyne, and thank you for watching.